everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and it's Monday, so we're returning to the Bestiarum, a dive into each respective species of the Halo universe, and today we continue with the Forerunners, focusing in on the Lifeworkers, a rate within the Forerunners that we will approach as though it were a subspecies of the Forerunners themselves. Fascinated by the realm of living things, Lifeworkers were at the centre of the Forerunners' applications of the mantle and were fundamental during the existential plight of the Flood. The Forerunners possessed many other rates beyond those that were common, but the details of many of these were lost to obscurity. Focused on the care and preservation of living things, Lifeworkers were masters of the building blocks of life and consciousness, architects of flesh and neurons. It was by their arts that Forerunner life could be extended indefinitely. Dead worlds made to bloom with life, an entire species archived for analysis and replication. They categorized and monitored millions of worlds, preserving and indexing the myriad forms of life found in Path Talgrath. They also implemented protocols that helped guarantee the precepts of the mantle were maintained. This occasionally resulted in the use of genetic tinkering to adjust a species in their care by way of brain patterning, imprinting, and germline modifications, known as a gesh, an effort to control and direct other species in the Forerunners' vision for a greater good. Those under the mantle's shelter knew the Lifeworkers as both caregivers and jailers, beings of light with the visage of serenity, who healed bodies and uplifted minds, yet who also twisted memories to ensure the integrity of their grand designs. Lifeworkers often retained more manipular features than other Forerunner rates, and their mutations nearly always optimized neurological functions rather than sheer physical capabilities. They ranged in height between 7 foot 10 inches and 9 foot 9 inches, or 238.8 centimeters and 297.2 centimeters, and massed between 259.3 pounds and 488.5 pounds, or between 117.4 kilograms and 221.6 kilograms. Their skin ran a spectrum of pale blues, pinks and browns, with deep blue to violet eyes. They were slender, lithe, and their features reflected the elegant contours of much of the galaxy's organic life. With a calming presence and mien, the Lifeworkers' fastidious governance of the developmental paths and destinies of living creatures was largely unknown to those touched by them. The greatest among their rate was the role of Life Shaper, and easily the most well-known and influential Life Shaper in the whole of Forerunner history was First Light Weave's living song, known as the Librarian. In the desperate throes of the Forerunners' war against the parasite, it was the Librarian who coordinated the massive galactic-scale collection and indexing of countless specimens as part of the conservation measure. After the activation of Halo, these catalogue creatures would be returned to their nascent homeworlds as the threat of the Flood fully subsided. All of this done in the hopes of ensuring that the galaxy would once again flourish with diverse life. While the Librarian ultimately sacrificed herself to ensure the conservation measure's success, her legacy continues to be felt by countless worlds and cultures. Of all Lifeworkers, her efforts were most keenly applied to humans, who she came to believe were the true inheritors of the mantle. Brilliant, inscrutable, and meticulous, the Librarian was a renowned Lifeworker who instituted the conservation measure, an effort to ensure the survival of diverse sentient species from the destructive effects of the Halo array. Rising to prominence within Forerunner leadership prior to the war with the humans, she began to discover the truth of her people's past on a fateful journey to Path Chthona, the genocide of the precursors at the hands of the Forerunners. Seeking to right these wrongs, she worked not only to preserve all thinking life in the galaxy, but to guide humanity who she believed were the true heirs of the mantle, naming them Reclaimers. As the preeminent Life Shaper, she set into motion thousands of eventualities and left behind imprints of herself to instruct those who would follow. Yet prior to the war with the Flood, the librarian's efforts often put her at cross purposes with her own husband, the Didact. She was forced to seal him away within a cryptum when his opposition to Halo demanded exile, and once more after he committed grievous crimes against humanity. The librarian's legacy is profound and stretches across the galaxy, impacting the lives of every species that survived Halo. Although she would perish when the array was activated, sacrificially drawing the Flood's attention so that the parasite could be finally destroyed, she ultimately succeeded in laying groundwork for humanity's rise, the discovery of their shared past, and their reclamation of the mantle. The librarian's careful efforts prior to the activation of Halo saw the indexing and preservation of countless species on the Ark, before they were returned to the galaxy to repopulate their native worlds. Her most significant contribution, however, was the reseeding of Path Chthona with precursor specimens she had retrieved from her time there. Dispatching a starship from the hidden shield world of Bastion through those entrusted with her plans, she sought to undo atrocities the Forerunners had committed millions of years earlier, which had been the origin of her own people's demise. One such discovery that the librarian began to uncover during her excursions to Path Chthona related directly to her own physiological differences to the rest of her species, and more broadly the differences between Lifeworkers and the other rates. The librarian noted that her physiological appearance bore a closer resemblance to that of humanity, including a more expressive face, more humanoid form, and the absence of a sixth digit on each hand, the second opposable thumb, instead maintaining the very humanoid 4 fingers and opposable thumb configuration. While she was in Path Chthona, she discovered evidence of an ancient rate of Forerunners known as the Theoreticals. Theoreticals pondered questions beyond the physical and were masters of unraveling the threads of causality, teasing order from the chaos of unreal slipspace domains, and grasping esoteric principles almost effortlessly. Old beyond measure, their rate was one of the few, perhaps even the only, that had an almost unbroken chain of records dating back to their early interstellar period on the Forerunners' original homeworld of Gibalb. They also enjoyed a unique connection to the domain, though little remains to describe what that entailed. Unfortunately, their blind pursuit of knowledge at any price and refusal to compromise eventually led to censure by the Ecumene Council, decimating their influence and numbers. The last known Theoreticals were eventually merged with the Builder rate. The librarian's own studies led her to one ancient Theoretical named Boundless, who had documented controversial truths about the origin of the Forerunners. Boundless's end came when she was forced to exile within a cryptum, which ultimately killed her due to a defect, though many believed it was no accident. Boundless had touched upon an origin of the Forerunners that highlighted that both the Forerunners and humanity both evolved from a species of mutual stock, created by the precursors some 15 million years prior. Her exile and eventual death within the cryptum was likely a politically motivated assassination at the hands of the Builders, whom refuted the idea that humans and Forerunners were effectively equals. This explained the librarian's physiological differences, harkening back to her ancient ancestral origins as a member of the progenitor species. The Forerunners were fascinated by life in all its various interactions and complexities, though only the Lifeworkers involved themselves in the details. The other rates assisted the Lifeworkers in their work by building, maintaining, and protecting the laboratories and reserves on which they worked. Sometimes this entailed changing planetary orbits, selectively seeding organisms and chemicals in biospheres that were threatened with collapse, or indexing and eliminating entire species that threatened greater diversity of life. The Forerunners had no policy or concept of non-interference in the lives and biology of other species, and their obsessions in upholding the mantle sometimes required a combination of military coercion, social manipulation, and integral modification of entire civilizations. One of the Lifeworkers' more impressive constructs were the seed worlds, small wonders that flower into larger miracles. Seed worlds are engines of creation deployed to dead, dying, or marginal planets to align them with Forerunner intent. Some turn dust into living plants and animals. Others drain the soil to grow machinery of death. All were built to a purpose, and the ancilla who control them know their duty goes on, even without the Forerunners to appreciate their long labour. As the rate least concerned with the space between stars, the Lifeworkers preferred to adapt the ships of other rates. Their rare collaborations focused on life maintenance and synthesis systems of larger orchestrations, while the few ships made by their own hands were extraordinarily stealthy craft, intended for covert operations on the worlds of technologically sophisticated sentient species, or deep intrusions into the flood-infested burn. The Forerunner ships that survived the devastating Flood War and the activation of Halo became the focus of profound curiosity and exploration by those who discovered them in the millennia that followed. For some, it aroused a sense of the divine, fostering deep and complex religions from what were seemingly inexplicable yet extraordinary machines. For others, it simply became the source of power and ambition, igniting countless arms races to wield the greatest of the Forerunners' creations, though most who attempted this were completely ignorant to the ship's exceptionally destructive capacities. By far, one of the Lifeworkers' most extraordinary accomplishments was the conservation measure, but these were only made possible by the immense Forerunner key ships, their encased Silex repositories, and the immense transit portals upon which they would seat. One such portal would remain beneath the very feet of the reseeded humanity on their homeworld of Earth, intended to grant humanity direct access to the central control network of the Halo Array, Installation 00, also known as the Lesser Ark, but instead would become the centerpiece of the climax of the Human Covenant War, all being silently observed by the remaining essence imprint of the librarian herself, stored within the complex. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly tap that like button, and if you're not already subscribed and want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Pop a comment down below telling me what you thought of today's video, or if you want me to cover something specific in the near future. I want to take this opportunity to thank and give shoutouts to my patrons and YouTube supporters: Spartan10148, my singular Contender class Ancilla, the triumvirate of minds within my installation's Metarch, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, my 7 installation monitors, Selphia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan1029, Chris, Orion and Shane, the crush of sub-monitors, Legion, Ryan, Lebrat, Spartan0137, Element 0, J3, Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, Ashton and 191 Shaken Lightbulb, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome people supporting the channel over on Patreon. My Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members, Spartan137, again, Maury, Jimbo and Balaz, and all other YouTube members keeping my installation functional on that glorious vacuum energy. I cannot thank you all enough. Shout out to John because... And if you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel on one of the support links in the description to net yourself some tasty merch and help keep the channel going. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.